All right, hey guys, it's Josh here from Compass Massage and Endurance Coaching. I wanted to come on today, just do a short video. Working with a new client that is doing his first Ironman 70.3 triathlon coming up in a few months. And you know how it is before we do one of our first events and something new, we have a bazillion questions about how like the race day actually unfolds. So I know he's got a ton of questions, so I wanted to shoot a video for him primarily, but also just I think it would be good to share. And I'll keep it kind of in a general sense that would apply to not only Ironman 70.3, but really any triathlon, just kind of how the day unfolds, what you need to do to kind of prepare. And then, for him especially, I think helping him understand what the end goal is right now, then we can work backwards in training and in preparation. And we've got several months to, work through and answer some of these questions in more detail as we get through it. But right now, like it can be so overwhelming when you jump into a new sport or a new type of event. Just kind of understanding what that's like can ease some of those, anxieties and help you understand what you need to do in preparation to get to the final goal. So I'll just talk through a few things, and I'm going to keep it real high level. Like I said, if you have specific questions, if you're watching this, shoot something in the comments. I'll do my best to try to answer it or point you in the right direction. But first things first, on race day, right? You're gonna want to check in. You're gonna want to rack your bike and set up your transition area. So that's kind of step one, right? So in an Ironman event, the transition areas are super nice and elaborate. They have fancy racks. If you're doing a local triathlon, I've been to some triathlons where it's the transition area is not so elaborate and you have to improvise. But at an Ironman event, you're going to have a nice bike rack. So you'll hang your bike on the rack where your number is. They'll show you where to rack your bike. And then directly underneath your bike, you'll have an area where you can lay kind of a beach towel out, and you can set your items out that you're going to need, like your shoes and bike helmet and that sort of stuff. So that's for an Ironman 70.3. If you're doing a full Ironman, a lot of times they'll have changing tents and that sort of thing. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'm going to keep it to where all of your gear is at your bike and you don't have changing tents and that sort of stuff. So you'll rack your bike, you'll lay out all your gear. So you'll lay out your cycling shoes, your cycling helmet. If you're going to wear gloves, you'll lay that out. You'll have your bike already prepared, right? So you're going to want to prepare your bike in the weeks or days in advance of the race. You're going to want to make sure it's tuned up, it's shifting properly. You're going to want to inspect your tires, make sure there's no glass or cuts in your tires. Make sure everything's good to go. Race morning, you're going to want to air up your tires to the proper pressure that you've been practicing with. You want to make sure your bike has the water bottles or nutrition bottles already on it. You're going to want to make sure you've got a flat kit. You're going to want to make sure you know how to use that flat kit. So, in the weeks prior to the race, you want to make sure you know how to change a flat tire. That's very important. In some of your big races like Ironmans, they do have support vehicles that will help you change a tire if you need help, but there's very limited vehicles out there on the course, and you might be waiting a really long time to have somebody come help you change a tire. So it's always my advice to know how to change a tire and don't wait on help, because you could be waiting 30 minutes perhaps before somebody can come help you. Whereas if you know how to change a tire, you can change a tire in less than 5 minutes typically. So, if that happens, be prepared. Make sure you have the stuff in your flat kit to be able to do that. So anyways, make sure your bike is ready to go, because when you come out of the water from the swim, you're going to want to grab your bike, jump on it, and go as quick as you can. So make sure you're not fumbling around trying to load your bike up, in other words. Also, make sure you have your bike in an easy gear to pedal before you rack it on the bike rack, because when you get on that bike, you want to be able to pedal easily. You don't want to have it in a super hard gear and you're having to mash the pedals to get out of transition. And you see that happening a lot. So make sure you have it in an easy gear to start with. So as far as your dress goes, you're going to want to start the day in your triathlon shorts and your triathlon top. So go ahead and put that on to start with. And then obviously when you get ready to swim, you're going to put your wetsuit on over the triathlon shorts and over the triathlon top. So you'll put your wetsuit on over those clothes. You'll be given a swim cap with your number on it. You'll need your goggles, of course, and you'll go down to the swim start. You'll also be given a transmitter that you'll wear typically on your ankle for most of these events. It's a strap, Velcro strap that goes around your ankle, and that's how they keep track of your time. So that'll be worn on your ankle. I typically suggest you put that on your left ankle, because when you're on the bicycle, the left ankle is not near the chain and the drive train of the bike. So I would put that on your left side. So you'll go down to the swim start. Typically you'll start in waves by your age group. So you'll be starting with a group of, if you're a man, you'll be starting with males, say age 40 to 45 or 40 to 50, whatever kind of the size is. And for this particular race that this athlete is doing, it's going to be a lake swim. So I suspect the way it'll work most of the time in a lake swim is you'll kind of start to wade out in the water a little bit, and they'll have kind of a starting area. So you might be waist deep in the water, waiting on your wave to go, which is good. I like personally being in the water, get some cold water on your face, kind of splash around, get wet a little bit, so that when you do start swimming, you don't have that immediate shock of that cold water, like kind of get acclimated to the water as you're standing there. I also like to do, before you even get in line for the swim, do a little bit of jogging, do some jumping jacks, do some push-ups, like get the heart rate kind of elevated, so you're not going from resting heart rate to that immediate shock in the water when you start swimming. If you can do a few just kind of warm up exercises just to get the blood flowing right in the morning before you jump in that water, it's always a good idea. Be conscious of where you position yourself at the swim start. You're gonna, there's gonna be a 50 to 100 people probably starting with you at the beginning of this swim start. So you don't want to be if you're not a strong swimmer, which most people aren't, if you're not the strongest swimmer, don't start front and center, of the pack, because that whole mass of people, when it starts, they're all going to converge, to one point, basically, to that first buoy out there. So what I like to do, even if you are a strong swimmer, I'm a halfway decent strong swimmer, but I don't like contact in the water. I don't like the risk of getting my goggles knocked off or kicked in the face. Like I kind of like the no contact swim. So I'll even position myself towards the front, but off to one side or the other. So that's always my advice, is unless you're an elite swimmer, don't start front and center. Get on the side somewhere. Those few seconds that you're going to give up at the start of that swim is going to be well worth it, in my opinion, because you don't want people swimming over you. Like that causes a bunch of anxiety in most people. Like if they get their head pushed underwater, if they get their goggles kicked, or they get kicked in the mouth, or they get hit in the face with the arm, like, not to freak anybody out, but that stuff happens if you're in the mix, that washing machine of the mix, right? So I like to get on the side, and if you're not a strong swimmer, get to the back. You're not going to give up much time at all in the grand scheme of things. You're talking about a matter of 20, 30, 40 seconds. And you can even pause when the gun goes off, you can pause, sit there and count to 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then go. Like let that cluster get away from you a little bit. And I value kind of a clear swim lane personally. So just some things to think about, and where you position yourself in that pack. Think about your breathing as well. Like I know some athletes, they can only breathe to one side. Like if you breathe to the right, if you only breathe to the right, then you don't want to probably line up with a bunch of people right here on your right side, because the minute you try to breathe, you're going to have all these arms and legs right here in your face. So give yourself space. That's what I'm saying. Give yourself space. And the swim, it's, in my opinion, the swim is the price of admission for the rest of the triathlon. So you've got to just get through the swim. Most people, the swim is not their favorite part. So do your best to get through it without burning a lot of matches. Be relaxed, be as calm as you can. Realize the difference between just killing yourself out there and going red line in the swim and being comfortable in the swim is a matter of a couple of minutes max. And you can easily make that time up during the rest of your day. But if you go out there and burn a bunch of matches and swallow a bunch of water and have so much anxiety that your heart rate's through the roof, it's not going to be probably the most pleasant experience for you. So just some tips there. But enough of the negativity on the swim. Once you get through the swim, and keep in mind, you can do the freestyle stroke, you can do the breaststroke, you can doggy paddle, you can sit there in the middle of the water and just tread water and take a break. In a lot of Ironman events, they have kayaks, they have inflatable buoys where you can hold on to a kayak, or you can hold on to a buoy if you have to. If you need to take a break, you can do that. The rules say that you cannot make forward progress, so you can't have a kayak, take you along the swim course, but you can rest stationary on a kayak. Take advantage of that stuff, especially if you're panicking, or especially if you're kind of way out of breath. Like, obviously safety first, out there, guys. So like, take advantage of those breaks if you need to. Those are there for your safety, right? Like, none of us are pro athletes, so like we all have to get home to families and jobs and other things, right? So like, take a few minutes and make sure you get through safely and on to the next event. So once you're finished with the swim, you're going to come out of the water. They're going to have a swim exit. A lot of races will have a wetsuit stripper. And those are people that will help you get out of your wetsuit, because if you haven't practiced it much, which I suggest you do practice it, but it's kind of difficult to get out of your wetsuit. They fit very tight. So basically the best thing you can do is kind of unzip it. There'll be a thing in the back, unzip it, pull it down to your waist, and then find one of these wetsuit strippers. And the best thing to do is just, when you get up to them, lay on your back and kind of pull your feet up, and they'll just take your wetsuit and pull it right off your legs. And then you take that swimsuit or that wetsuit with you, and you're going to take that to your transition area. So you're going to walk or jog to the transition area from there. You might see a lot of people sprinting to the transition area. I don't advise that. The time that you save by sprinting is not worth it, considering how much effort you're putting out to sprint. So just be relaxed. If you're out of breath and tired, walk. Like, use that time to like assess yourself, think about what you've got going on, and get prepared for the bike. Don't sprint, in my opinion, unless you're fighting for a podium spot, in which case you've probably done a lot of these and you're not listening to what I'm saying anyways. So I will say this: make sure when you get out of the water, especially after you get your wetsuit off, make sure your timing chip is still on your ankle, because sometimes those things get pulled off in the water. sometimes when they take your wetsuit off, they could come off your leg. So make sure you still have that and make sure it's secure. And if you don't have it, you need to let one of the officials know, and they can get you another one before you go out on the bike. But make sure you don't lose that. It's important. So you're carrying your wetsuit, you got your goggles, you're going back to your bike, transition area. So at this point, you got to flip the switch, you got to get on this bike, and you got to go ride, right? So as I said earlier, your bike should be ready to go. So what you need to do is put on your shoes, put on your socks if you want to. For longer triathlons, I do recommend socks. The time it takes to put on some socks is worth the not having the blisters in the hot spot in a longer triathlon, in my opinion. Make sure you got your bike helmet, sunglasses if you want to wear sunglasses. Put on some sunscreen if you want to put on some sunscreen. Let's see. Just take, if you're going to put anything in your pockets, make sure you put stuff in your pockets at that point. But anytime you're in transition, my advice is don't rush through transition. That's your time to make sure you've got everything you need before you go out on that bike and before you go out on that run. And, once you leave, you really can't come back. So make sure you don't forget anything. That's very important. Just take stock of how you're feeling. If sometimes I'll put some water, a Gatorade, have a bottle ready for you to drink, because especially coming out of the water, especially if you got a lot of water in your mouth from the lake or the water, you might want to rinse your mouth out, or you might want to take a drink of water, or you might need some calories. So maybe have a gel ready or something, or have a little bite of a Cliff Bar ready at transition after you come out of the water, just to give you something, right, to drink or chew on there while you're getting ready. So once you're ready, once you have everything, take your bike. A lot of times you have to push your bike. You have to push your bike out of transition. So you're not going to be able to ride it until you get out on the road, but you'll push it through transition. You'll go to the transition exit area, hop on your bike. There you go. Follow the course. Know the rules of the road is what I would say. Read your athlete handbook. Most of the triathlons we do are non-draft legal, so you can't draft. So there's rules about how long you can stay behind someone before you have to pass them. And if you're getting passed, how long you have before you have to drop back out of that draft zone. And they do have, especially in Ironman events, they do have officials out on motorcycles that will hand out penalties if you're caught drafting or if you're caught littering and those sorts of things. They will hand out penalties, time penalties. I hope you don't get a time penalty, but if you do, they'll tell you what your time penalty is, and you'll see these penalty tents along the course. And if you get a penalty, you'll have to pull into the penalty tent, and you'll have to wait, 5 minutes or whatever the penalty time is, depending on what you did. You'll have to serve that penalty there before you're allowed to get back on the course and go. The bike is, in my opinion, it's kind of like the rolling buffet time for you in preparation of the run. Kind of everything you're doing on the bike is preparing you everything you're doing from a calorie standpoint and a hydration standpoint is preparing you for the run. Because on the bike, your heart rate is lower. Your stomach is pretty much stationary as well. So you can digest more calories on the bike than you can in a run, for example. So, a general rule of thumb here, and again, this is stuff you have to practice in training, but a general rule of thumb is 300 calories an hour on the bike. And you're going to want to drink 24 to 48 ounces of fluids on the bike per hour as well, depending on how hot it is. But you may not feel hungry, you may not feel thirsty, but you have to religiously eat and drink on the bike in order to set yourself up for a good run. And then one of my favorite sayings of all time in triathlon is, it's not a bike race. So it's not a bike race. There are going to be, I would say, 50 to 75% of the people in the age group athletes want to race you on the bike in a triathlon. They want to race you. They want to see how many people they can bury on the bike. Like, the bike is everybody's got these sexy bikes, right? They got these high dollar bikes, high dollar wheels, high dollar helmets. And like, that's your chance to showcase it, right? But in all honesty, like that, especially if you're talking a full Ironman, which this is not really catered to a full Ironman, but your first half of your bike ride should be like almost at like a training pace. Like, you shouldn't be working hard on the bike until the end of the bike ride. You want to keep it in that aerobic zone all day, right? You don't want to be creeping into that threshold or zone 4 kind of heart rate zone or power zone, right? Like, you only have a set amount of matches when you start the day, and it's easy to burn matches on the bike. And it's kind of like the swim adage, right? So the difference between, let's say in a half Ironman, the difference between going hard on the bike and going at a comfortable endurance pace for a half Ironman distance, let's say the difference might be 15 minutes in time. And that might be a stretch. It may only be 5 or 10 minutes. But let's say if you go extremely hard, you can save 15 minutes on the bike. But let's assume you've pretty much blown yourself up and you're not going to be running very well for the run portion. We all know that if you're running, even like decent runners, let's say 9 to 10 minute pace for a triathlon. If let's say you run 10-minute pace, but you've blown yourself up, so now you have to walk a lot. And if you walk 1 mile, that's probably like a 20-minute mile. So that's 10 minutes you've given up on the run in 1 mile, right? So think about that. So if you saved 15 minutes on the bike, if you have to walk 2 miles on the run, you've already lost that time. So that's where I go back to, especially for kind of mid-pack athletes, like most of us are. Like, the bike should be comfortable. You should be comfortable on the bike. Everything you do on the bike should be preparing you for having an excellent run. That's where triathlons are won or lost for most of us, is on the run. You want to be that person that is smiling, that is enjoying the run, that is running and not shuffling or walking. You want to be that person in the last few miles of that run that is passing all these people that blew up because they biked too hard. That's who you want to be. That's fun. Like, that's fun to me when you're that person. And I've been both people. I've been the person that's blown up, and I've been the person that's had miserable final miles of races. And that's no fun. That's no fun, being that guy that's shuffling along, getting passed by all these happy-go-lucky people. So obviously all of this is much easier said than done, and it takes a lot of trial and error, and it takes a lot of experience, years. A lot of these people have years and years of experience doing this. So it's much easier to sit here and tell you how to do it than it is to actually do it. But, getting back to my point on the bike, super easy on the bike. Let those people pass you. You're going to see people passing you that you think, those people should never be passing me. They're going to be passing you. Let them go. You got to bury that ego, man, on the bike. Like, let those people go and know and trust, because I promise you will pass them back on the run. You just got to know that, and it will happen. So on the bike, I talk about calories. Personally, I like to use some sort of liquid calories on the bike. So you'll have your bottles filled up, and let's say each bottle might have 200 or 300 calories in it of liquid nutrition. So you'll know every hour you need to drink you need to drink that bottle. And depending on how many hours you plan to be on the bike course, and depending on how many bottles your bike can hold, you may have to use the aid stations to refill your water or your calories. So the aid stations, in my opinion, are the most dangerous places on the bike course. Typically, the way the aid stations work is they're kind of a rolling aid station. So there'll be a line of volunteers always on the right-hand side of the road. They'll be holding bottles. So like in an Ironman event, for example, they'll have bottles and they'll typically hold them like this, like from the top, and you ride along very slowly. Obviously, you slow down, you ride along, and you can just grab that bottle and keep on going. Read the athlete guide. It'll tell you what they have in those bottles. Sometimes it's Gatorade, which has calories in it. Sometimes it's water. Sometimes they have both. But again, aid stations, you got to have your head on a swivel at the aid stations because they are dangerous. People are stopping, people are getting off their bike, people are swerving, it's just use extreme caution, because the last thing any of us want to do is do all this training, and all this money and time to travel to the race, to have a kind of a brain fart accident at an aid station and fall over and hurt yourself and get you out of the race, or hurt, or damage your bike where you can't go on any longer. Like, I just hate to see it. And I've seen it before. I've had friends that have had crashes in Ironmans before and have been taken out of the race. So all of this, which, most things can be avoidable. Most of the time, it's because people are getting in a hurry, or people are trying to save a couple seconds or whatever. But it all goes back to, you got to just finish the race, right? Like, none of us are professional. 1 or 2, 5, 10, 20 seconds here and there is not going to kill your day. So if you have to pull over and mix bottles, or if you have to pull over and kind of readjust things, my opinion is to go through the aid station first and get kind of clear of all that. And then make sure you signal like to the people behind you that I'm pulling over, then pull over to the shoulder. And then you can sit there by your bike and do what you need to do. But don't try to do it while you're rolling. Don't try to do it around a big mess of people. So let's see. So the bike, so that's the main thing, right? And then as you get towards the end of your bike ride, I would say the last 5 to 10 minutes of your bike ride, what I like to do is I like to switch into a little bit of a taller gear in the rear. I like to spin, put it in an easier gear. And what that's going to allow you to do is spin the legs out at a little higher cadence for the last 5 to 10 minutes of your bike, because you've been kind of settled in on this bike. You've been settled in your cycling cadence. And you got to get off that bike and go run. So by shifting a gear or two and spinning the legs out, you're kind of loosening the legs up a little bit. You're starting to activate some of the muscles that you haven't activated in a while. You could even stand up a little bit. I would suggest that, but just like get those hamstrings going, get the quads going, like just kind of start to get that muscle memory about, hey, I gotta go run in a minute. So let's kind of mimic the run gait as much as we can on the bike in those last few miles. And that's going to make that transition to running a little bit easier for you. So pulling into transition, you're going to pull into transition. You're going to have to dismount your bike. They'll tell you where to dismount it. You're going to dismount it. You're going to push your bike back into the transition area to your rack. You're going to hang your bike up, take your helmet off, take your cycling shoes off. If you want to change socks, some people do. If you want to put on a fresh pair of socks, put on a fresh pair of socks, put your running shoes on. Probably, we didn't talk about this before, but probably, like, I always like to use a race belt, which is basically just a belt that you pin your number on. So you can have it already ready at transition, and then you just have to put the belt on. Because you do have to have your run number on before you leave the transition area. So most people don't take the time to pin them on. You can just put this little belt on. So that's one thing I would suggest I didn't mention before. Put your race number on. If you got a hat, if you got sunglasses, whatever, just whatever you need for the run. If you're going to use a handheld water bottle or something, grab that. If you're going to use your own gels or your own nutrition, make sure you have that at your transition area and make sure you put those in your pockets. And then head out on the run. And, really the run's pretty self-explanatory. You want to, use the first few miles, 2 or 3 miles, just to kind of get into that running groove. It's going to take a little bit of time to get your running legs under you and to start to feel comfortable running. It's going to feel a little awkward there for a bit, which you should have been practicing transition runs all along and training. So you know what to expect, but it's going to take a little bit of time to start to loosen up. The biggest thing I'll say about the run is you just got to start, just like on the bike, you got to start hitting those calories and those fluids immediately. Don't wait an hour into the run to start consuming calories because it's too late. Like, you're already, you're starting that run, kind of at a level position. So you're going to start depleting as soon as you start that run, and you need to start refueling as soon as possible. So whatever that looks like for you, whatever you've been practicing in training. But for most people, that's, I like using gels. So 1 gel every 30 minutes or 2 gels an hour is kind of a good place to start. And the nice thing about, if you do an Ironman event or a larger event, they typically have more aid stations. At most Ironmans, they have an aid station every mile. So you have opportunities to drink and get nutrition frequently. One thing I like to always do is just walk the aid stations. So they usually have long tables set up. So when you get to the aid station, just walk. And I don't carry a handheld or any sort of like hydration with me for an Ironman event, but if you wanted to, you could, but I just like to kind of live off the course. So by walking the aid station, it allows me to make sure I slow down and I make sure I'm able to drink enough water or calories at each aid station. So, don't get in a hurry. Don't think, oh, I'm going to bypass this one, I don't need it. I would walk and drink something at every aid station. So every mile, don't pass any of them up without getting something, even if it's just to wet your mouth. Because especially in something like a half Ironman or a full Ironman, like, you're starting that run in the heat of the day, right? So a lot of times people, myself included, like, once you feel thirsty or once you feel like you're in trouble, it's too late typically. So it's important to, like, from mile 1, start drinking. And not only that, but depending on where you're racing at, if it's hot, start cooling yourself off right there at the aid station, mile 1. Some of the hotter Ironmans, they'll have sponges and ice. Use the sponges to cool your neck, cool your arms, shoulders. You can stuff the sponges down in your tri-kit, where you can throw them away at the next aid station, but just do what you can to keep yourself wet and cool. Because it really becomes a lot about heat management, especially in hotter climates during the day. So that's really it. And like I said, on the run, like, your goal should be to set yourself up for a really good last 10K, 5K to 10K at the end. That's really what your focus should be. Everything you do all day long should be to set you up to run a solid finish to your race. So if that's a half Ironman, I would say the last 3 to 4 miles, I want to see you crushing people. You know what I mean? If it's a full Ironman, the last 6 or 7 miles, you want to be that person crushing people. You don't want to be the person, walking it in. If you are, that's fine, right? Like none of us are elites here. It happens. Matter of fact, I ran a 50K over the weekend, and I had a really bad last 3 or 4 or 5, 6 miles myself, and I know better. But I let it get away from me. And I was that person that was struggling the last few miles and not the person that was having a good time the last few miles. So we're all human. It's all possible for us to have, to finish not the way we want. So I'm not immune to that either. I'm just saying, really do your best to set yourself up for a good finish and finish on a high note, because that will mean more to you, I think. And it'll be much more pleasurable experience. So that goes back to, just to recap, right? Like the swim, position yourself in a comfortable spot on the swim start, be comfortable, do whatever you can to get through the swim as relaxed as possible. Don't burn matches on the swim. Don't burn matches sprinting in and out of transition area. It's not worth it. Relax, walk, assess your situation in the transition area all the time. Make sure you have everything before you leave. If you don't have something, ask somebody. It's important that you have everything that you need before you leave. On the bike, make sure you are fueling and hydrating and taking it comfortable on the bike. I'm not going to say easy on the bike, but comfortable on the bike. This should not be your fastest ride of the year. It should be a comfortable, endurance-paced ride where you are fueling and drinking and keeping your head on a swivel and not getting into accidents and being safe through the aid stations, and thinking about that run and thinking about setting yourself up for a good run. That's where to use like a golf analogy, my dad always used to say, you drive for show and putt for dough in golf. And that's kind of like triathlon. Like you bike for show, but you run for dough. So it's like, let's focus on that run. That's where we want to be thinking about all day. And then on the run, it's just about getting it done. It's about being conservative at the beginning, not burning those matches. And it's about staying on top of your calories and your hydration on the run. And it's about being disciplined, and it's about walking those aid stations, and it's about drinking fluid at the aid stations, heat management, and just getting to the end and being that person at the end that's, smiling and high-fiving people because you just had an excellent experience. Because that's what it's all about, really. It's about, these things are about the experience, and it's about, building memories and being an inspiration kind of to those around you, and to yourself, and to proving to yourself that you can do things that maybe you didn't think you could do before. So it's about having fun. And, if you smile and you radiate that kind of attitude, like you're going to feel that kind of attitude. And it's about just being present throughout the day, being patient. Patience a big one. And then, being deliberate all day long. Like everything you do should be a deliberate decision. And if you do those things, then you'll have a great day. So I think that's it in a nutshell. I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff, but if you have questions, comments, hit them in the comments. I'll try to respond. But I appreciate it, guys, and good luck to you all in your races. See ya.